Welcome back to the channel. You're watching Theory Hammer, which will one day be your favorite Warhammer YouTube channel. I'm KevBot. For today we're going to take a look at the Imperial Knights. We're going to take a tactical look at them. We're going to see if we can stomp around, crush some people's faces, what kind of tactics they have, what kind of things are good for their army, how to use them, all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about points, we'll go over their builds, we'll go over some of the combos that they have, where there's not really that many. We're going to talk about the Imperial Knights though. Imperial Knights are so much fun, they're very straightforward, and they're just a lot of fun to play. So if you like that kind of content, stomp the like button, subscribe to Theory Hammer, hit Nurgle's bell icon, leave us a comment, and check out our other videos as well. We got all kinds of videos, we're making more. You're going to find something you like, go check them out. So, Imperial Knights, huh? The big, the stompy, they're awesome. This is what they got. They changed this recently. Each time a model is selected to shoot or fight, you can reroll a hit roll, and you can reroll a wound roll. So you basically get the same thing that Eldar have. Reroll a hit, reroll a wound. I'm on board with that. That's better than rerolling a hit and wound roll of 1. This is just reroll anything you want. So this makes a lot of your this makes a lot of your guns that are high strength, high damage, reroll a hit, reroll a wound, makes them much more reliable. We'll get into the specifics of that shortly, but this is what you get as your army rule. This is not your detachment rule, this is just what you get. You got Lay Low the Tyrant. That's what it does. Now, your army has two different modes. You have a regular mode and then you have your honored mode. In order for this mode to become honored, you have to destroy the enemy's warlord. The other version of this that you can play is the Reclaim the Realm. Is my camera vibrating? That's crazy. Reclaim the Realm, you add 1 to this model's move characteristic and add 1 to the advance and charge rolls made for it. So that's all your models in your army, plus 1 move. So all your little knights are moving 13, I believe. All your big knights are moving 11. And you can add 1 to advance and charge rolls. So if you do end up advancing, or if you do need to charge, which is a thing you'll do a lot, you'll get plus 1 to it. It's not as good. Lay Low the Tyrant is the one that you're usually going to take unless you're building your army specifically around Reclaim the Realm, which you can do. You can do it, it's just not going to be an optimized army. You need guns in your army. Having plus 1 to advance and charge rolls is cool, but having reroll a hit and a wound all the time, that's shooting and close combat, that is just better overall for the damage output that you get. Then you have your Bondsmen abilities. This is like the main thing that your army does. This has a lot of different special rules. So for this, you have to control your opponent's objective marker in order for Reclaim the Realm to become honored, for your army to become honored. Your Bondsman ability though, this is what you're here for most of the time. The reason I don't like this ability is something I'll talk about towards the end in the conclusion, but what it does is you pick a unit within 12 inches of the knight, basically. It gives out the Bondsman ability, the big knight. So you pick an armiger within 12 inches, it gets whatever Bondsman ability is listed on that thing's data sheet. And the ones that we'll go over, I'll explain what they are. That's your army rule. Your detachment rule is a 6-up Feel No Pain. If you're honored, you get a 5-up Feel No Pain. So that overall pretty good. You know, that gives you basically 1/3 more wounds, or 50% more wounds, 25% more wounds. It gives you a couple more wounds is the point. It's nice to have that 6+ Feel No Pain. The 5+ Feel No Pain, if you can get that early, is really nice to have, because then all your vehicles are actually pretty durable. For every 3 damage hit you're taking, you're only taking 2. That's really nice to have. The enhancements that are good here, there's only a few. There's more than normal here. There's 3 of them that are really good. There's the Mysterious Guardian. This is insane. What I want you to imagine is you have an Imperial Knight in the backfield. It touched a piece of terrain, and that piece of terrain, it can just see through it now. It shot your thing, it killed your thing, you were very scared, and now you went, okay, fuck that, I'm going to hide behind this wall over here in my turn, and I'm going to shoot over at this little baby knight, or maybe this other Imperial Knight. I did some damage there. We're off to a good start here. And then at the end of your turn, that big, crazy, scary knight that you wanted to hide from just gets picked up off the table and just gets placed somewhere else, within line of sight of the unit that you didn't want to die. That's what this does. So the model gains the Deep Strike ability, and then once per battle, at the end of your opponent's turn, if the bearer is not within engagement range, of course, of any enemy units, it can fade away. If it does, you remove it from the battlefield, and then the reinforcement step of your subsequent movement phase, set it up anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches away. from stuff. So it doesn't even put it into strategic reserve where you have to come on from the table edges. This just lets you teleport a knight down. It's really, really good. It's 35 points for this, so you're paying for that ability, but my god, is that disruptive. It reminds me of Grey Knights. You can basically make one dude a Grey Knight for one turn, and it could actually sway the game, because like I just gave you a perfect example of something that it can do. I teleport onto an objective that's unoccupied because you couldn't get to it or something like that. It allows you to do so much stuff. It gives you so many options, and that's really good to have. Armies that give you lots of options are always good because you need to have options if you want to be able to win the game. So that's just super duper good. Being able to just teleport a gigantic 400-point model anywhere, there's no world where you don't take this enhancement. You're going to take a regular knight in most armies, I think, because of the way this army plays, which I'll just talk about right now. Because of the Bondsman ability, you are incentivized to play at least one big knight so that you can get a Bondsman ability on stuff. One of these enhancements allows you to do it to 2 knights. So now you're like extra, enticed to get that and put it on something that's big. The Mysterious Guardian is absolutely the thing you're going to take instead, though. It's just too good not to take. So that's the problem that I have with this army, though, is that it wants to have armigers and big knights because they kind of are supposed to work in unison, and it just doesn't work when your big knight doesn't get its own ability. It doesn't get the Bondsman ability at all. It just doesn't work anymore. You kill that big knight, and now your little baby knights are just little baby knights without an extra ability. So they're still good, but you see what I'm saying? Like, you take out one piece of their army, and that whole aspect of their army ability is just removed from the game at that point. And you're talking about an Imperial Knight here. Like, they're hard to kill, but they're not that hard to kill. You focus enough firepower at that thing. There's units in every single army that can just kill an Imperial Knight in one turn, just about. The way it plays is a little annoying in that aspect. They're not like Chaos Knights, where you can just run all War Dogs and be fine. You have to have at least one big knight in this army. And a lot of the time, at least when I'm playing them, I'm playing with Canis Rex, so even being able to have the Mysterious Guardian on another big knight is difficult because you don't have a lot of points. But with the points updates from the balanced data slate, you might be able to get something on there. Like, you might have maybe like an Atropos, maybe. You'd have some other knight there that can then take Mysterious Guardian, and then you also have Canis Rex because you can't leave home without him. He's insanely good. We'll talk about him in a second. I've talked about Mysterious Guardian for way too long at this point, and I've gone off on a complete different tangent that I still wanted to discuss either way. Mysterious Guardian's really good, though. If you're going to take an enhancement on anything, or if you're going to take an enhancement, it's probably going to be this. So that's what that does. Revered Knight, I don't care. I'm not even going to tell you what it does. It's on screen. You can read it yourself. Then you have the Mythic Hero. This is the one where it gives you the Bondsman ability of your knight to 2 different things. So on like a Warden, being able to give out -1 damage to 2 different Warglaives that are then going up to the middle objective, that's going to be hard to get through. They've got a 5-up invuln, they've got 12 wounds apiece, they're toughness 10, like they're good in combat, they're good in shooting, they're rerolling a hit, they're rerolling a wound, shooting in combat. They are really good in that sense. But again, like I was just saying, they're not good when you can just kill the big knight who doesn't have -1 damage anymore, and now the other guys can't get it anymore. And you had to pay for Mythic Hero, which, let me just bring it up now, I think it's 25 points. And it is. It is 25 points for that. So you're taking a now 450 point model to 475 points. And the Imperial Knights, in order for them to be competitive, I would say as competitive as Chaos Knights, would be to just give them the Bondsman ability, put that back on the actual big knights. We've fixed the problem where they can just see through terrain all the time. You just hide behind the piece on your side. They can see through the piece they're touching, but they can't see through yours. So anyway, that's what that does. It's very, very useful because there's a lot of different knights in here that can give out some pretty nice abilities. You can't take this on the Castigator, though, because the Castigator is not a Questoris model. I don't believe the Atropos is either. Things like this, where it's just Imperial Knights only, you can put it on anything. So that goes on an Atropos for me. But this one specifically, I really, really, really wish that the Warden could get his Bondsman ability on himself, because then you've got a Big Imperial Knight there, 475 points, you're paying for him, and then you've got 2 Warglaives that are all -1 damage that turn. You need that on them. Being able to get maybe like lethal hits on a couple things is pretty good if you're taking a Crusader, but overall, because of the way that this works now, I do not believe this is something that you automatically take anymore. Mysterious Guardian, you do. Mythic Hero, you just don't. You just don't. You just don't. And then the Banner of Macarius Triumphant, this is also really good, and I don't remember how many points it is off the top of my head. It is 30 points. It gives one of your Imperial Knights sticky objectives. That is amazing, especially with an army like this that has almost no secondary. In fact, it has no secondary units. There's not a single thing in this army that's a secondary unit, which is why this army also needs to have allies of the Imperial agents allied with them. You're going to want to take an assassin, a Calidus assassin, maybe also a, what is it called? The one that runs up 9 inches, scouts 9 inches, he explodes, he's got a claw and a sword. My brain is melting because of this game. What the fuck is it called? Eversor. Jesus. So you might even take a Calidus assassin and an Eversor assassin and 2 units of henchmen, because the henchmen, you need some backfield stuff. The henchmen are 40 points. Take 2 units of them, henchmen here, henchmen there. It's gonna be a lot of fun. You need it though. You need the assassin, you need maybe the other assassin, and you need the 2 units of henchmen. I don't care what any of you say. I am right about that. You need to have those secondary units in this detachment because you cannot play the game effectively without them. So back to my point here. Banner of Macarius Triumphant, sticky objectives, very nice to have. This is something that you need to not just set and forget though. If you sticky your home field objective, you can't just leave the home field objective at that point. You've still got to have units nearby it. That way you can prevent your opponent from deep striking on it or from just coming in on the table edges, getting onto your home objective, or just getting close to your backfield. You never want to be in that position if possible. So these are generally better on like midfield objectives that you can clear off entirely. This will help you for a turn or two. If you can dominate that side of the board, it can help you for the rest of the game. But I think people sometimes see this as a way to like keep their home field objectives safe, and it's not like that. You will control it all the time, but until your opponent deep strikes on it, and then you don't control it anymore. So that's a very good one to have though, especially in an army where you don't have a lot of models. You have a ton of OC you can stick on objectives, and being able to just auto control it after you move off of it the next turn, that's very, very strong to have. Like I said, especially if you're dominating that side of the table and you can start sweeping, then this is great. So very good. And then you have Unyielding Paragon, gives you Armor of Contempt. Basically everything in your army that can take this, Questoris only. I don't think your big knights are Questoris. I'll have to double check if I don't forget. But they might be a Questoris, and if they are, they have a 2-up save, and this will actually be effective on them. But other than that, I don't think this is all that important because of Rotate Ion Shields. You're going to get a 4-up invuln most of the time. Yeah, I just don't think you need this. The Unyielding Paragon is also 40 points. It's the most expensive one on here. I don't know how, in what fucking world this is more expensive than Mysterious Guardian, but hey, I didn't write the rules because if I did, they'd actually be good. Let's move on to some units. And I think this is, well, let's not move on to units. Let's move on to stratagems. There's only 3 of them that are useful. And this one should be a rather short video compared to my other, these other reviews, these other Tactica, these other videos I'm making. This is gonna be hopefully a little shorter because there's literally not much to go over. And it's a very straightforward army because there's not a whole lot of units in it and because they're just all big stompy robots that just wanna Jaeger your face off. Shoulder the Burden. This is one of your better ones. It is 2 CP though, and it is battle tactics, which is relevant. So, in your command phase, you target an Imperial Knight model from your army that's lost wounds. So it has to have been damaged, but not destroyed. You add 1 to its move, toughness, save, leadership, objective control, and it gets +1 to its hit for any attacks that it makes. So that's shooting and close combat. It's only until the start of your next command phase, so it's not a permanent thing, and you can only use this once per game unless your army becomes honored, and then you can use it a second time. But being able to improve your save characteristic and your toughness, so you become toughness 13 with a 2-up save, very few things can get through toughness 13. You start capping out at around 12 with most weapons, unless you're like a railgun or like a lancer or something like specialized for really actually being dedicated anti-tank. a lot of things don't go past toughness or past strength 12, and becoming toughness 13 means you're wounding on 5s. Like, you just become very hard to kill at that point, and especially if you're honored, because then you have a 5-up feel no pain. So this becomes very good late game for sure. As long as you can keep your Imperial Knights around. Very good on Canis, because Canis allows you to put stratagems on him for free, I think. So that's really good on Canis. As soon as Canis starts taking some damage, as long as you're not putting him in a position where he's dead, then this is going to improve his everything by 1 for that next turn, and then he's definitely not going to die the next turn, because he himself just kills things. So this is super good on just about anything. You could even use this on Armigers, makes him toughness 11, gives him a 2-up save. You know, that makes him faster too, better OC, all of that's good on everything. So you definitely want to be using it on the bigger stuff, because it's 2 CP, so you don't want to be using it on the smaller stuff if possible. And when you have a bigger model with more wounds, it's going to get more from that. It's going to have higher toughness and everything. It benefits more from this stratagem. So Shoulder the Burden, very good. Then you have Rotate Ion Shields. This is from like way long time ago. They've always had this. They'll probably always have it. They get a 4-up invuln in the shooting phase, in your opponent's shooting phase. After they target your Imperial Knight, you're like, cool, now it is a 4-up invuln, and you make them all, and it doesn't die. And that's how that works. It's 1 CP, it's a War Gear strat, so you're not getting it for free, you're not doubling up on it. You can't double up on this in the same turn either, because it has a restriction of once per battle, so you couldn't actually use this on 2 things either. But Rotate Ion Shields, it'd be nice if it was Battle Tactics, because then Canis could put it on himself, but like I said before in some other video at some point, not being a battle tactic stratagem has a silver lining, which is the fact that it's not a battle tactic stratagem, so you can't increase the cost of it with a Calidus Assassin or the Imperial Guard Relic, or there's probably one in Genestealer Cults that I can't remember the name of. There's definitely one in Genestealer Cults I can't remember the name of. But none of that shit works on non-battle tactic stratagems, so you're never going to have to worry about Rotate Ion Shields becoming more expensive, which is nice. Thunderstomp, do we really care about Thunderstomp? It gives you dev wounds, but you cannot target monsters or vehicles. You don't have enough attacks for this to matter a lot of the time. Without rerolls to wound, like full rerolls to wound, it's okay, because you can sweep with most of your weapons, and most of those are damaged like 3 or 2 or something more than 1. So having devastating wounds on like 15 to 18 attacks, depending on what it is, if it's like a Lancer, I think that has like 18 attacks hitting on 2s with a reroll to hit and a reroll to wound. That's nice, because at that point, I think they're 3 damage. You know, that's going to be 3 devastating wounds, 2.5 devastating wounds-ish, plus the reroll. Makes the math a little weird, but that's okay for 1 CP. You're not going to use it very often, because you're only going to be able to use it against non-vehicles and monsters. So it'll be useful when it's useful, but it's not something that you'll use very often. I don't use it very often because it just doesn't come into play very often. And half the time, your Imperial Knights that are getting into combat and wanting to do damage are going to do that damage anyway. And so you just don't really end up needing the devastating wounds. So maybe consider it, but otherwise, no. Squire's Duty. I was about to say Squirt's Duty. Yeah. So this is a battle tactics strat. This happens in your shooting phase or fight phase, and you pick 2 Armigers from your army, and then you pick an enemy unit that's an eligible target for both of them. Till the end of the phase, when resolving attacks that target the enemy unit, improve the strength and armor penetration of the attacks by 1. If you're honored, you add 1 to the damage characteristic as well. So this is cool, makes you strength 10. If you're strength and armor, so strength 10, you become AP 2. You can become 4 damage flat, which is pretty hilarious. So let's say you have 8 attacks. 5 of them hit. Reroll the 1. You get 6 hits. You're shooting a Land Raider. Okay, I know it's my favorite example. You're shooting a Land Raider. Okay, I have Armor of Contempt, and I'm in cover. I have a 3-up save now. If you're honored, you're doing 4 damage. If you're not honored, you're doing 3. So you have 6 hits. 2 of them are going to wound. You reroll 1 of them. It's a 0.333 extra. That's like 0.8 or something like that. I take 0.8 times 3 damage, which is like 2. So I take 2 damage from one of these things shooting me. It's just not enough. It'll be good against certain things, but I don't like Armigers in the first place because I don't think that they have enough damage output. And I don't know, I just don't like having them in the backfield. There's not a lot of firing lanes in this game, in this edition, with the way that terrain's set up, unless you're playing like player-placed terrain, which most of the tournaments I go to do not do that. I guess you gotta pick your targets well, but being fair and honest and everything else, if you're picking the targets well and you're able to do 4 damage a piece, even 3 damage a piece is nice. This happens on 2 of your armigers. It's only 1 CP, so it's 0.5 here, 0.5 there. You can't really ask for something better than that at the end of the day. This is battle tactics, so you could get it increased, but you're only going to probably use it once or twice. You're pretty CP hungry as an army. You have a lot of 2 CP strats. You're going to rotate ion shields almost every turn. So being able to use Squire's Duty isn't going to happen all that often. But the fact that it targets 2 models makes it pretty damn nice. It's pretty cheap for what it does. And against the right targets, being AP2 and a flat 3 damage or 4 damage, that will do some damage to something. I always think about these things as like anti-tank. And when I see abilities like this that aren't anti-tank enough, I usually write them off. But if we're being completely honest with ourselves, this isn't terrible, like I said, for the last like 2 minutes because of those aforementioned reasons. So keep in mind, just like the Thunder Stomp, it's something that you'll do once in a while when you really need to kill something and you can get like 16 shots on it with Strength 10 AP2, 3 damage flat. It seems like it's going to kill some stuff. If I want to make a comparison, the Dread Knights, they'll have, 2 of them is 12 shots, Strength 10, AP2, with ignores cover though. The range isn't nearly the same, but overall they're kind of the same weapon. Just the AP isn't quite as good, but you have more shots. So if you think about it like that, like there's 16 shots instead of 12, you're not hitting on 2s, you're hitting on 3s with a reroll to hit and a reroll to wound, AP2 instead of AP1. It's not quite as good, but that's about the damage output that they will do. So becoming Strength 10 against a lot of other targets, like other tanks, like Lancers, Predators, things along those lines, they'll skirmish well with those. Hammerheads, transports, they'll be able to put some damage on those types of things. It's just like, sometimes it's just not going to be enough, because you're going to have to commit 2 different units, so at least 280 points to killing, in my examples I just gave you, 125 points, 90 points, 75, not very many points. So like, that's what it is. That's my take on it. Let me know what you think. Then you have Trophies Claim. It's in your shooting phase or fight phase. You target an Imperial Knight from your army that has not been selected to shoot or fight until the end of the phase. Each time your model makes an attack that targets an enemy unit, add 1 to the wound roll. If your model destroys the enemy, you gain 1 CP. If not, you can't use the stratagem for the rest of the game. +1 to wound. You just, like, why is this 2 CP? Is it because you can maybe regain a CP? I don't care. Make it 1 CP. If you destroy the enemy unit, you got it for free. Good job. If you didn't destroy the enemy unit, you didn't. And you can't use it again. That's fine, I guess, too. It's fucking dumb, but it's fine. The fact that this is 2 CP, Epic Deed, can't use it for free, +1 to wound on your Strength 20 combat, you just don't need it. Valiant Last Stand, you can also probably forget about this one, although don't, because being able to fight on death is very good. So fight phase, 1 Imperial Knight model from your army that was just destroyed, and that is eligible to fight but has not been selected to fight. You can use the stratagem even though it's just destroyed. I hate that. Hate that, it's obvious. Don't even put it in there, save space. Before rolling to see if it just deals any mortal wounds as a result of deadly demise, it can fight. When doing so, it's assumed to have 1 wound remaining, unless your army is honored, in which case it has all of its wounds remaining. It counts as having all of its wounds remaining, so it's not -1 to hit, basically. So this could really change a game. But it's 2 CP, and you're only going to have like 2 big knights in your army. They're probably going to die from shooting, and they're not ever going to get to use this. You also can't use this on Hector, because he jumps out. But this is another one of those stratagems where when it's useful, it's really useful, because you don't have to roll for this. It's just, it happens. You get your rerolls to hit still, you get your reroll to wound still. You can sweep if you're in a unit of big guys, like, I don't know, insert some big unit here that you want to sweep against. You can sweep against it, or you can punch against that Dread Knight that hit you, or that whatever, that big demon thing, or whatever it may be. You can get to attack back against it, and that just may kill their unit as well. And then it puts you in a much better position, because they probably weren't expecting that to happen. Usually people don't expect to charge in and lose their unit. That's always a feels bad day. This gives your opponent a feels bad day. So, okay for 2 CP. I don't mind it. The fact that it's a giant fucking model that's swinging, and it's automatic. You don't have to roll for it. So that's your stratagems. Those are your stratagems and your enhancements. It's very straightforward how this army plays, like I said. You just have big stompy knights that just want to move up the table and sit on objectives and just kill stuff that's there. You don't have to think very much to play this army. That's not a bad thing necessarily. I would actually consider that a good thing because this game is majorly complicated. It always has been. It's only ever gotten more complicated over time until 8th edition happened. There were 8 pages of rules. Now there's a lot more, but 8th edition had the least amount of rules and things were better. That's a whole series I'm gonna make. How this edition fucking sucks. But we're gonna get into some data sheets now. I know you're all very excited. I've been talking about other stuff, and now we actually care about the units that you want to take because all of you want to understand how to build lists, and you want to know what to put in those lists, and you want to be better players. I'm here to help you with that. So this is what we got. Armiger, Helverin. So I was gonna leave this off the list, but I can't because it's only 140 points now. Look at its profile. I mean, 12 wounds at toughness 10, moves 12, OC 8. So, and it's battle line, so you can take 6 of these things if you want to. It's got its Armiger autocannon. It's an autocannon basically through and through. Strength 9, AP 1, damage 3, 48-inch range. The only difference here is that it has 4 shots instead of 2 or 3 or some other number that isn't 4. So this has 4 shots apiece. So this thing is just outgun everything, but it just doesn't have enough AP. AP in this game has been reduced this edition, and that is making it so that certain things are very hard to kill, especially marine stuff or anything that can get Armor of Contempt, which isn't just marines. There's probably half the factions in the game have an Armor of Contempt stratagem. So making this AP 0, even on a 3-up save, now I still get 3-up save. It's just not enough. But for 140 points, these things against the right targets will really start putting some damage on people, especially when you have other things up that are like front and center. Like if you have other warglaves, you have big knights that are up on the objectives, you know, going up and doing stuff. These in the backfield, people tend to ignore them because they have to deal with other stuff first, and you only have so many anti-tank weapons in your army. You can't really afford to shoot at some little armiger thing and then have to deal with everything else in combat, unless your army is purely close combat based, and then, you know, different story there. These guys' ability is that if they're wholly within my deployment zone or within range of an objective marker, they get anti-fly 2+. This, I think, is something that people actually underestimate a lot. Anti-fly, so there's a lot of flying units in the game. All the Tau stuff flies. Necron stuff flies. Like you got the Monolith that flies. It wounds a Monolith on it too. You have a Monolith that flies. You have Wraiths that fly. Jetpack guys fly, obviously. So you have things like Death Company. I don't think Lancers and stuff fly, right? Like Repulsors and stuff, they don't fly anymore. Another complaint I have is all the damn keywords on everything. It's worse than last edition. Anyway, yeah, so there's a lot of flying stuff in the game. A lot of Eldar stuff has fly. Yeah, so what else has fly? A Catan has fly, so these things wound Catans on 2s. So that's not a bad ability to have, at all. It's actually a very good ability to have. It's very niche, because certain armies have 0 fly, so this will be one of those things where it's either really awesome during a certain matchup, or it's actually completely useless in every possible way, because they don't have any flying stuff. But for 140 points, you get a 5-up Invuln, you get a Helverin with 2 of these autocannons on it. They're good for your backfield shooting, they're good for kind of just holding down areas. They're OC 8, so really good on your backfield objective, and just kind of overall not so bad. You'll probably take 1 or 2. Your Warglaive, though, moves 12 inches as well, so this is exactly the same. Moves 12, has 12 wounds, OC 8, all that is the same. It's got the 5-up Invuln. However, this thing I think is better. It's 150 points. So both this and the Armiger can take a Meltagun on top. So they got like an overhead Meltagun, which is cool to have. This is better though, I think, for just raw damage output. And I think the numbers are on my side for this, especially when you don't have to use Squire's Duty on the Armigers to give them +1 strength and AP and maybe damage. I think even if you had the +1 damage, I still think these probably do more, because they have 2 shots. So it's total, like, if you shoot at something and you're wounding it on 3s, you're gonna do like 11 wounds or something to it with its Meltagun, with its thermal spear. As long as you're within 12, you're gonna do 2 hits most likely. You're gonna do probably 2 wounds, and it's AP4 and D6 damage +4. So I did the math a little earlier. I don't have it up in front of me, but I think even if you have like a 3-up save, you're gonna take 5 damage from this. The Armiger, it's just not gonna do that. Unless it's a flying thing and you're using Squire's Duty and have +1 damage, then you might. But otherwise, this thing is always going to do more damage because its gun has much higher strength, much higher AP, much higher damage normally. And getting that reroll to hit and wound as your army ability, it makes weapons like this better. So that's why this is better. In combat, same idea. if you have 4 attacks at strength 10, AP 3, and 3 damage, you're getting sustained hits when you charge, right? When it charges, yeah. So you get sustained hits when you charge. Plus you get a reroll to hit, and you get a reroll to wound. You're looking at about 4 wounds. Between the extra 6 to hit and the reroll, which also has a chance to be a 6, you're looking at about 4 wounds between the reroll to hit and the reroll to wound and the sustained hits. So this thing is really good. For 150 points, these want to get up there and shoot stuff because they're very good against vehicles. They're very good against like heavy infantry, like obliterators and centurions and just big, tough, high wound count things. These will just delete them. They'll delete terminators. They'll delete all kinds of stuff. So take these and then run them into combat and chop stuff up in combat as well. I just do wish that I could make them -1 damage and my big knight -1 damage, because then I wouldn't be afraid to put my big knight in certain places, like a warden that gives you -1. That's how I kind of use them. I just throw them up to the center of the table or go around the sides, and I'm like, you know what? Here's a warglaive for you. Maybe there's 2 of them actually. There's usually 2 of them there. And getting into combat with 2 of them, they just chop shit up. They blow stuff up with their shooting. They're very reliable. That's why I like them. I like reliability. I don't like taking chances if I can help it. The keywords here aren't super important. We got Vehicle, Walker, Battle Line, Imperium, Armiger, and Warglaive. So it is an Armiger, so you can give these the Squire's Duty, which is interesting because their weapons then become Strength 13, AP 5, and D6 plus 1, plus 5. Or, yeah, if you're within melter range, it'll be 5 plus D6 damage. So that's pretty cool because you have to shoot with 2 of them. So, yeah, maybe like a monolith, right? That probably would delete a monolith pretty fast. You would get 4 shots at the monolith. You'd probably get 4 hits on the monolith. So you get 2 wounds with a reroll. So you're going to get 3 wounds on the monolith. It's AP 5. It gets no save. Even if it's in cover, you get a 6-up save. So, assuming that they fail some saves, that's going to be a minimum of 12 damage. More likely, it'll be what? So 5 plus 3.5, so 7 plus, it'll be about 17 damage on average. A little less when you actually count the, I'm not sure. It'll probably be slightly less because of the actual save, subtracting from that statistic. But yeah, being able to do 17 damage to a toughness 13 vehicle with 4 shots, pretty good. Do I really want to try to do the math on the Armiger in my head? You're going to get 3-up saves because you're going to be in cover, but you're getting wounded on 2s. So 16 shots, 10 hits, plus 2 rerolls equals 11 hits. 11 hits on 2s is going to be about 9 wounds. You'll take like 9 damage from those. So if you're +1 to your damage, you'll take 12 damage. So just about the same, probably. Actually, no, way less. What did I say? These would take like 17. That was just like some mental math. So that might be slightly inaccurate, but I'm pretty sure they just do more damage just about in every scenario. So, very good. These are going to be, a lot of your units are just damage dealing units. It's hard for you to use them as like secondary units and be able to do specific things, like ones where you need to be, like investigate signals or cleanse or things where you can't actually do anything else that turn. That's hard with things like this. It feels real bad to take a 150 point model and just go, I'm just not going to do anything with this turn. Like, fuck that. Take some secondary units from Agents of the Imperium because you need to have them. Your Armiger Warglaives, though, they're going to run up the table and they're going to cut stuff up. And that's kind of their whole purpose, is to kind of support your big knights and keep stuff in their way. Very good for 150 points, and we'll move on. So Mr. Warden BigDaddy.com over here, he only moves 10, he's toughness 12 with 22 wounds, OC 10. Got the 5-up invuln against ranged. It's always against ranged unless it's coming from the, over here. But we'll get to that. So the Warden, basically what this guy has is he's got a giant chain gun. Strength 6, AP 2, 2 damage. He shoots 18 attacks with a Grey Knight in combat at you. That's what he does. But his ability is that he gets devastating wounds as long as he's not shooting a monster or a vehicle. So that's pretty awesome. 18 shots, 12 hits, 2 dev wounds on average. I like it. It's 4 damage that you can rely upon on average. If you get a little lucky, maybe you'll get 6, plus some of the other wounds that you're getting through anyway. And if you're shooting at things like, I don't know, like Terminators and stuff like that, 2 damage is nice, AP 2, you know. You can't really ask for more than that on something like this. You weren't going to get AP 3. Getting dev wounds is great, and then this is the guy that gives out the -1 damage. So, he is Questoris, so you can take that enhancement on him to give it out to 2. It's just a shame that he can't get it on himself anymore because he was so much more durable at that point. And like I was just saying, I would actually not be afraid to actually put him in a spot where he is in danger of getting shot by a lot of things, because then I'm like, I'm -1 damage from all this. I can actually tank the damage. I can rotate ion shields. I can always have that 4-up invuln, and I'm -1 damage. So anyway, you can't do it anymore, so I'm not going to talk about it. This guy's great as just a frontline damage dealing unit that's going to help out your little dudes there. I'll have to reread when this, like if you destroy the model, does it just go away immediately? I bet you it does. The Bondsmen thing. I bet you it just ceases to exist immediately, which is so stupid. But yeah, your Warden is very, very good. This chain gun just melts things. That's, like I said, 12 hits, but it's actually going to be around 12.6 hits. Plus your reroll a wound, which is nice as well. If you're shooting at something that's strength, toughness 5 or less, you're going to be wounding it on 3s, and so you're looking at 8 wounds plus a reroll, so like 9.3 or something. 9.3 hits or wounds with this, which is pretty nice to have for sure. Plus it can take, the missile pod on top. It's also got a melt-a-gun. It's also got a heavy flamer, so it is kind of bristling with guns. Frontline damage dealing unit, and that's all it does. It gives out your -1 damage on stuff, and that's very, very useful. Even now, it is still very useful on a lot of things, because you still have to decide, like, do I want to go after this knight that's giving out the -1 damage, or do I want to just go after the armigers that are getting -1 damage? Because a lot of the time, that's a hard choice to make when you have a 4-up invuln on this guy, and he's kind of just sitting out there with them. They're not easy to deal with. Toughness 12 is hard to get through sometimes, especially with a 4-up. It's just, you'll just spike sometimes and just not be able to do it. Other times, it'll just die immediately, but the other times when it doesn't is when it starts becoming annoying. So it is good. It's just not super competitive because you can't rely on things. You can't rely on this guy to live. So if you're keeping him behind a wall or something and giving out the Bondsman ability that way, that's probably your best bet, because then this guy can maybe engage something over here, wipe that out over here, and then his little dudes that got the Bondsman on them, they can go up to a different direction and then do their own thing. So that's one way I would probably use him if I was going to take him still, is to put that enhancement on him for the -1 damage, give it out to 2 armigers, and then move them kind of this way, keep him behind a wall, keep him in a place where he's at least within 12 inches of those armigers or other ones the next turn. That way he can give out that ability again. But you might get to a point where you can't really, you have to commit with him, and he might just not do it. He might not get you what you need, and he might just die the next turn. That's how I would play with the Warden. He's 450 points now, so you're looking at 475 if you give him the be able to do this twice thing. Epic Hero or something like that. Mythic Hero. I like him a lot. I think he's good. I just wish that he could give out his ability to himself. All right, so the Crusader is this next one here. It's only on the list because he actually went down pretty significantly. Let me double check his points. 445. So 5 points less than the Warden. This guy crusades really hard with his 2 big guns. He's probably going to have a thermal spear. That's what I would take. The thermal spear is very, very good. Where is it? Thermal cannon. So it's melt to 6. I mean, it's 2d3 shots, strength 12, AP 4, and d6 damage. You got that reroll to hit. You got that reroll to wound. It's going to have on average 4 shots plus blast, and that's a lot. It's going to melt a tank for sure. Let's just say you get 4 hits on something and you're within melta range. 4 hits, probably, let's just call it 3 hits total. So you'll get 3 hits, maybe you fail the reroll, but you'll get 2.5 wounds or so. More like 2. Yeah, it's like 2.3. So you have 3 dice, 1.5. 1.5 divided by another 2 is 7.5. So now you're looking at 3.25 wounds. 2.25 wounds on something at AP 4 and minimum 14 damage. So yeah, you're gonna kill just about anything you shoot at with this. But there is a place for the rapid fire battle cannon because it's just so many goddamn shots, dude. It's rapid fire D6 plus 3. It's a 72-inch range, so you're always in rapid fire range, like literally all the time. So that's a total of 6 plus 2d6 shots. 6 plus 7 is 13, so you're looking at an average of 13 shots. Strength 10, AP 1, and a flat 3 damage. Yes, it's AP 1. It's not enough. AP 1 is never enough, but you have 13 shots with this thing, and it's rerolling hit, rerolling wound. So whether you take the rapid fire battle cannon or you take the thermal cannon, either one of those is good depending on what you think you need to do. because I think he always has the chain gun. You're always going to take the chain gun as well. Same thing the Warden has, it just doesn't get dev wounds. And then he's also got a top gun. So he is actually bristling with guns. He's got a melty gun, 2 heavy stubbers if you want it instead. I'm pretty sure they can become melty guns, at least the one of them can. A heavy flamer, a battle cannon, a chain gun, and a missile pod on his back. Like, there's so many guns that I can't even mention them all. He gives out sustained hits if he stays still. So he doesn't give it out, but he gets sustained hits if he stays still. So if you do the worst possible thing in the game, which is stay still, you'll get sustained hits 1, which isn't good enough. But the Bondsman ability is pretty good. You add 1 to the hit roll while it's affected by this ability, and it's only ranged attacks. But if you are going with a lot of armigers, like the ones that shoot, the Helvrins, giving them +1 to hit makes them hit on 2s, plus a reroll, that's 8 hits, just about every time. So that makes it a little bit more reliable. This guy is also Questoris, so you could give out the ability to both if you wanted to take the epic hero thing on him. That's pretty good on armigers as well. Combine that with Squire's Duty, 16 attacks. Both of them are hitting on 2s with a reroll on both of them. So you're looking at 16 hits. You're looking at, let's call it, 8 wounds plus 2 rerolls is 9 wounds on something that's toughness 10 at AP2 and 3 damage. That's probably going to kill whatever you're shooting at. If it's something like a Lancer, you bring it down to a 4-up save because it's in cover. And what I say, 9, let's say it makes 5 of them, that's still 12 damage. So that's pretty good to have, but not as good as -1 damage. But there's some give and take. This guy's got 2 guns and different abilities, whereas the Warden has 1 gun plus his top gun and a better ability. He's also got some combat, so there's some give and take there. Overall, the Warden is better than the Crusader simply because of that -1 damage. That is just too good to pass up. But this guy is also pretty good, and for 440 points as kind of like a backfield, not a backfield, but like a backward facing shooting unit, this thing will put out so much firepower. And if you have other stuff that's up there on the objectives and killing your opponent and being distractions, people aren't going to be able to focus on this because they've got to focus on your other stuff first. And so that maybe gives you an extra turn or 2 of shooting with this guy before he really starts getting bogged down or shot himself or any of that kind of stuff. So depending on how you build your army, the Crusader is going to be a good one to pick. I think what's his face is the last one. So yeah, these do have 2-up saves. They are not Questoris though. So you can't give these enhancements to, at least the one for the Armor of Contempt, you can't give it to one of these ones. Alright, so then you got Canis Rex. I talked about Canis, I talked about all these units in my index review. This guy is the same profile as a regular knight. The Crusader was the same as this as well. Moves 10, toughness 12, 22 wounds, 3-up save, 5-up invuln. Always the same. OC 10. This guy's leadership 5. The other ones I think are 4, right? Or not 4, they're 6, yeah. I meant to say 1 more, not 1 less. So this guy's leadership 5. So very, very rarely is he going to be affected by Battle Shock. What a surprise, Battle Shock doesn't fucking matter. This guy's crazy though. He's 435 points, so he is one of the cheapest knights that you can take. He's a special character, so you cannot give him any relics or enhancements or anything like that. But his Chainbreaker is really, really dumb because it's a 24-inch ranged gun that's strength 14, AP 3, and a flat 4 damage with blast and sustained hits 1. The sustained hits 1 thing gets really, really silly because of Chainbreaker. Each time this model makes an attack, an unmodified successful hit roll of 5+ scores a critical hit. So let's just say you get your average of 3.5, which is going to be, we'll call it 3. That's going to be 3 hits because you're hitting on 2s with a reroll, plus one of them will be a 5-up. So you're actually getting 4 hits on the lower side of average, just 4 straight hits with a strength 14, AP 3, and flat 4 damage gun. His multi-laser, I don't care about his multi-laser, it never does a fucking thing. But his Freedom Hand, same deal here. Hitting on 2s, 5 attacks hitting on 2s, that's 5 hits. If it's so close, we're just going to call it 2. If we're going to say that the gun shot under average, then we're going to say that the fist hits over average. You're going to get 2 5-ups on the fist. That's 2 extra attacks. That's 7 hits with your strength 20, AP 4, and flat 9 damage fist. You're going to kill whatever you hit. You only need to get 2 hits through to kill a Land Raider. You've got 7 hits there, 7 wounds probably because you're +1, or you're re-rolling 1 of them, so you're more like 5, I guess. But you get what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying here? This will just go insane. If you get 6 shots with your las breaker and pulsar las thing guy here, 2 of them are going to be 6s or 5s. That's going to be 8 hits with this thing. It's blast as well, so if you're shooting it like a Terminator squad, you're getting 2 additional shots, which is going to end up giving you a total of 6 plus 2, which is 8. And yeah, like this just gets out of control very, very quickly. In combat, he's also very, very good. He's only 435 points. And then he has this, Legendary Freeblade. Once per turn, you can target this model with a stratagem for 0 CP, and you can do so even if you've targeted a different unit with that stratagem this phase. So, yeah, very stupid. You can just target this guy with stratagems for 0 CP. If we go back up here to our stratagems, we have the Squire's Duty and the Shoulder of the Burden. So this is the one where I was talking about earlier. If you get damaged on your Canis Rex, you can give this guy, where are you? You can give this guy +1 to his toughness, +1 to his save, +1 to his move. He gets +1 to hit, I think. He does all this cool stuff, and he becomes much more difficult to deal with at that point because he's so much tougher and has a better save, and then he's going to have rotate ion shields. So this guy is very, very good. You could probably do a lot with him. You can deep strike him as well. Well, you can't deep strike him, but you can put him in reserve. Then he can come off the table from reserve, kill a unit with his high intensity, whatever the fuck this thing is, chain breaker, las impulsor, kill a unit dead. He's pretty safe there. Maybe you make a charge, maybe you don't. You probably do though, because you get a free reroll on it because of his ability here. So you roll a 9, then you reroll a 9. It's like a 50% chance, right, on a reroll? I'll have to double check that. But yeah, he's awesome because of that. So you can throw him in there, and then if he gets damaged after you rotate your iron shields, the next turn you put that thing on him for free, so that he's +1 toughness, +1 save, +1 everything, +1 fuck your face, and he's awesome. So this guy's super duper good. But yeah, there's not much like tricksy stuff here. Like this is what you get. This is WYSIWYG, guys. This is the embodiment of WYSIWYG, the Imperial Knights. What you see is what you get. There's nothing crazy, nothing cool that you can do, nothing like that you can insane combo out. You can just do good things on good units. So very straightforward and easy to play. But now we're going to switch gears and talk about some of their Forge World units. Why is this gigantic? Oh my god. You know what, I'm going to leave my face here, so hopefully it doesn't get in the way too much. If it does, I'll move myself. We're not going to talk about this guy. We don't care about him. What we do care about, though, is the Lancer. So okay, so we're good here. The Lancer. This thing moves 14 inches. It's toughness 12. It's got a 4-up invuln all the time. 25 wounds, so it's got more wounds than normal. But having a 4-up invuln in combat, that is very, very significant. Think about how many AP3 weapons there are for combat. There's a lot, or better. A lot of demon, like big demon stuff's gonna have AP3. This stuff has AP3. Angron has AP3. Grey Knights have AP3. Everything I can think of, basically, every single army can get AP3 or better in combat. So this guy's gonna have a 4-up invuln all the time, can't do anything about it, and he can move 14 inches. That is just very hard to deal with. When something can move 14 inches and then charge you, that's a very, very far range to move, especially when they can be moving over certain buildings and stuff because they're Imperial Knights. That's one of their abilities from their actual army rule that I didn't even talk about. They're able to move over things that are 4 inches and less in height as if they were not there. So yeah, these guys they're much faster than you'd expect them to be if you're not very experienced, because they can just move over the middle terrain pieces and just be in the center of the table, and that's bad. So this guy has some cool abilities. He can use the Tank Shock stratagem for 0 CP. So basically, because it's strength 20, you get a +2, 22 dice. If you don't roll 6 6s or 6 5-ups on 22 dice, I'm sorry, but you should. So that's what you get. You get an automatic 6 mortal wounds when this thing charges in, plus his 5 attacks, a strength 20 and flat 8 damage with lance, so +1 to wound as well. His lancy shooty thing here, don't worry about that. It's never going to do any damage to anything. It's AP 0, it is 2 damage, and it does have sustained hits, but unless you're shooting at regular Space Marines or something with that, don't expect that to do too much ever. This guy is cheaper than he used to be. He is 450 points now, the Lancer, 465. The other thing that he gives you is he picks a unit, he allows them to advance and charge, so one of your armigers, that's his Bondsman thing. A lot of these guys are not going to have the Questor's keyword, and so you can't put the, what is this called? Mythic Hero. You cannot put Mythic Hero to double up on the advance and charge. So, kind of a shame, but overall, for what this thing can do, for how fast it moves, it's just really, really nice. How many points is a gallant? 400. So for 65 more points, you get 3 wounds more, you get a 4-up invuln all the time, you get +2 to your move, you get lance on your combat, which it doesn't. It does also get a gun, and it gets to do 6 mortal wounds on a charge. Bondsman ability is probably better. I think the other guy gives you, the gallant gives you like +1 to hit or something. I don't care, he's not on the list, tell me if I'm wrong. But this guy being able to give you advanced charge, that's really nice to have. But again, not being able to affect himself anymore with this, it's a real big drawback. But yeah, the Lancer is really good. This will really put a lot of pressure on your opponent and make them have to deal with it, because if they don't, it's just gonna cut through their army every single turn that you don't do something about it. So this is a good unit in the army for just raw damage output in combat. Hitting on 2s, plus a reroll, wounding on 2s, plus a reroll, AP3 and a flat 8 damage. Generally speaking, you're gonna find these things going up the sides or the middle of the table, murking a unit that's there, taking the objective, and then dying the next turn. Which is fine because you have a bunch of other little stuff, hopefully, that came along with it that they couldn't deal with at that point. So as long as you're trading well and you're not just losing your Lancer for no reason, as long as you're going after something that's really important, then you're going to want to take one of these things. And if you really like getting into combat, the Lancer is going to be good for you because the Lancer has really good combat. So, Lancer, we like you. The Castigator, his Bondsman ability is to give you sustained hits. So if you could give that, and +1 AP, I always forget about that. Sustained hits and +1 AP. This is great. This is really good because this makes your armigers with the Strength 9, AP1, Damage 3 guns, the Armiger autocannon, it gives them sustained hits and it makes them AP2. So if you do combine this with Squire's Duty, then you would have Strength 10, Sustained Hits, AP3. I'm down for that. I'm definitely down for AP3. And Sustained Hits. So, again, it's a shame that you can't do it on multiple units, but even on one of these things. You get 8 shots, one of them will be a 6. You get to reroll hits. You get to reroll a hit. So, let's say you get 6 hits, now you've got 7 hits, now you've got 8 hits. Great. Alright, Atropos. This thing moves 12, toughness 12, 3-up save, 5-up invuln. So kind of like the Lancer, 25 wounds as well, but only a 5-up invuln. Although it has it in combat as well, which is a godsend. Having an invuln in combat is really nice because a lot of times combat stuff, so anything that's AP3 is putting me to a 6-up save, but not anymore because I have, whoa, did you see that? That was crazy. That totally changed to a 4. I'm recording this. That changed to a 4. Tell me if that changed to a 4. Where was I? It's a Lancer with a 5-up invuln, but it's got guns. It's got 2 guns, and it's got combat. I love this thing. Its abilities aren't great, but it's great. I love this thing. This is what it does. It's got that same exact gun that Canis Rex has. Sustained hits 1, 24-inch range. It does have 2 profiles, which I totally glossed over. There is a second profile, which is like an anti-infantry profile. This doesn't have blast, which is the difference between Canis and this guy. It does have sustained hits 1 though. So 36 inches, 2d6 shots, strength 7, AP1, 2 damage, hitting on 3s with everything, obviously. Nice. 7 shots on average, strength 7, AP1, 2 damage. Cool. Or you can go for the high intensity, which is the 24-shot one, d6 shots, strength 14, AP3, and a flat 4 damage. And getting that sustained hits, baby. I love sustained hits. Exploding 6s is so good. Then this has a secondary gun. It's got a gravity singularity cannon, or graviton singularity cannon, which also has 2 different profiles. Blast on both. The only difference, literally the only difference, is one becomes devastating wounds or not. 24-inch range, D3 shots, strength 16, AP4. Hell yeah, AP4. D6 plus 1 damage. How can you go wrong with an Atropos? Like, if you're just gonna take like a Castigator, which I don't even want to talk about because its ability isn't good enough, I don't think. Just take this instead. It's got more attacks in combat at a higher strength, with sustained hits, it's got 2 guns instead of 1. Granted, they don't have twin linked, but your strength 16 and 14, so your target priority is going to be different for something like this. But yeah, like strength 16, AP 4, and D6 plus 1 damage, getting devastating wounds, you do that every time. Like every single time you overcharge this thing. Absolutely. Why wouldn't you? Just do that. D6 plus 1 devastating wound damage, you get reroll to hit and a reroll to wound, remember. So shoot this first, try to get that reroll to wound, and just get a 6 and just feel good. In combat, you either get max shots with its shooting gun, is what it is. It's either max shots at strength 7, so 12 attacks, strength 7, AP 1, 2 damage, or max shots, which is 6, strength 14, AP 3, flat 4 damage. Both of them have sustained hits. Like, sign me up, dude. 6 attacks, I hit with 4 of them, 1's a 6, I hit with 5 of them. I reroll the last one. I hit with 6 of them. Same thing, same deal to wound. So I'm gonna wound with 4, I'll reroll 1, get 4.66 wounds on something at AP 3, flat 4 damage. You'll make 1 probably. Cool. So that's 12 damage on you, ish. Fine, seems good. It does explode, they all explode D6 plus 2, like all Imperial Knights do, except for the little ones. They're just D3. But yeah, for his Bondsman ability, it's bad. I'm just gonna put it out there, it's bad. But I don't care, because I love this guy. Each time that Bondsman guy, so your Armiger or your Warglaive or the thing that you're targeting with it, it gets to reroll the hit and the wound roll against Titanic and Towering models. So these are becoming a little bit more prevalent. So yeah, you can get reroll hits, reroll wounds to an Armiger, which is pretty nice. You don't really need it's better on actual Helverins, actually, because getting rerolls to wound is really, really nice, but it has to be against Towering or Titanic, so basically other Imperial Knights or Monoliths, and that's what it gets. But its other ability, each time it makes an attack that targets a monster or vehicle, add 1 to the hit roll. So now it's going from hitting on 3s with a reroll to hitting on 2s with a reroll, and this isn't in the shooting phase, this is all the time. So your Bondsman ability is bad. That's just the truth of the matter. But getting +1 to hit against monsters and vehicles is awesome. And if it's a Titanic or Towering, you add 1 to the wound roll as well. So this guy will punch really hard against a monolith and shoot really hard against a monolith. He's going to be wounding it on 2s, because it's toughness 13 now instead of 14. So wounding it on 2s, it's only getting, 4 up save at best, 4 damage flat, plus the Singularity Cannon, you're getting a 5 up save at best. Yeah. Then in combat, max 6 attacks. Very, very strong. Now, this isn't good against armies that don't have any monsters or vehicles, which there are armies out there that won't take any of those. So it can be entirely useless, but I like a 440 point Imperial Knight that has 3 extra wounds, has a 5 up invuln all the time. I didn't even mention this, moves 12, so it's slightly faster than the other ones, has 2 guns, both of which are great. Both have 2 different profiles. One's good against infantry. Then you have your same thing in combat with 6 attacks. Yeah, this thing is very, very strong for 140 points. I don't know how you leave home without one of these. I think you take Canis Rex and you take the Atropos, and you give the Atropos the Mysterious Guardian. In a different build, you can take some other stuff. Like you could take the Warden, and take some war dudes with them and make them -1 damage, and that's completely valid way to play them. But I love the Atropos so much, just simply because its profile is so good for its points, that I think you have to take one. So that's my take on it. I think the Atropos is really, really good, because he's good at everything. He's good at shooting, he's good against vehicles, he's good against infantry, he's good in combat, he's got extra wounds, he's got a 5 up invuln, he's fast, he's everything that you want, and he's cheap for 440 points. I don't know how he's only 440 points, but take an Atropos, dude. So fucking good. That is gonna be all of their good units. There's a lot more that you can go over. Check the points, or not the points, but there's a link down below that includes points. It's a link to GW's website. It has these things you can download, has points, has balanced data slates. Yeah, so go check it out. There's all kinds of other data sheets in here. They're not worth your time to look at, but you can do that if you so choose. So overall, the Imperial Knights they're a lot of fun to play, and they don't require a whole lot of thinking, and I like that sometimes, especially if I'm just chilling with my friends and I don't want to play some kind of real hardcore game. I will just play Imperial Knights, and I'll just put a bunch of big stompy robots, big Jaegers on the table, and just not have to think about anything. Just have to walk toward my opponent and shoot and get into combat. Got no psychic, I got nothing to worry about. All I do is just move and shoot. I really like armies that allow you to just kind of pick them up and put them on the table. You only have a few models that you have to worry about. You're not worrying about little infantry squads, typically speaking, unless you're allying in assassins, which you need to do. But you're not going to have a whole lot of other stuff to do stuff with. You don't have to think too much about what you're doing because your army consists of like 7 models. You have like 6 big dudes, or 6 little dudes and 2 big dudes in these points at least, and then some other like assassins and stuff. And so you're repositioning your assassin and you're repositioning your henchman, making sure your backfield's secure, and the rest of your army is moving up the table. And then you have your knights maybe kind of more back, but not as far up as your Hellglaives. And that's generally how the army is going to play. That's how I play it, at least. You always move that stuff up first because it's faster, and it just gets in the way of your opponent. And if your opponent doesn't deal with the armigers, those things will fuck them up. That Meltagun they have is a lot of damage. The reroll to hit and the reroll to wound, you're usually going to get 2 wound through with that. If you only get 1, that's still enough sometimes, because if you're within Melta range, it's +4, and you get a D6, plus it has a Meltagun on it as well, and then it's got its combat. Yeah, so there's not a whole lot to really talk about past that. The Imperial Knights are just one of those armies that's hard to balance, and I said that in the last video, because you have 400-point models that if you lose them, well, you just lost 400 points at once. And things like anti-tank weapons are really designed to take out big tanks quickly, like railguns or lancers and things like that have really good AP, really good range, and a very high amount of damage. I guess I'll add the Caladius in there as well, the grav tank for Custodes. Just one shot's a Land Raider apparently. And those types of things are going to be what you need to look out for. And those types of things aren't good against big units of things that you could, like if you're playing a different army, you can have big units of guys that have multiple models, as opposed to these where you have one model that's all your points in one. The flip side of that is that you have a 400-point model that has strength 14 and strength 16 weapons and combat and a ton of attacks with all of them. So they will kill stuff very quickly. Imperial Knights do struggle against Horde armies. They just don't have a lot of anti-Horde stuff, and you just can't put enough models on the table for it to really matter all that much. I am willing to bet that if I put my Black Templar army on the table, that is 110 models, and that is including like good things like Sword Brethren and stuff, like multiple units of them. But if I were to put that army on the table, I literally don't think this army could kill everything, and I would just outscore it, and that's kind of the whole point of that list. But yeah, there's certain armies that they're going to struggle against. They're definitely going to struggle against a lot of anti-tank. So they're kind of hard to play sometimes because you have to put a bunch of tanks into places where they're guaranteed to get shot at. And I say that a lot because I fucking hate that aspect of this game. But that's how the game forces you to play now, is you have to put your units in places where they're guaranteed to die. And that's just how the game works. So I don't think there's a whole lot of strategy in that, because I've been playing this game forever, and we'll get to that series at some point. So I guess I'll wrap it up by saying that you're going to want to make sure that you use your stratagems as effectively as possible. Oh, wrong page. You're going to want to make sure you're using your stratagems as effectively as possible here, because Shoulder the Burden is really, really good. To use this, though, you've got to make sure that your big knight is in a place where it's not going to die that turn. You can afford to take some damage on it. In fact, you have to, in order for this to come into play. But if you're going to be using this, make sure that you gotta keep, like, my camera keeps vibrating. If you use this, you're going to want to make sure that you are keeping the knight safe prior to using it. Otherwise, it's not going to be useful because the knight's going to be dead. Squire's Duty, it's fine. But the Rotate Ion Shields, you're going to use this every turn. Just make sure your opponent doesn't bait this one out, which is actually kind of easy sometimes. Like if I have some random unit and you have 2 Imperial Knights in line of sight of it, of a bunch of my stuff, and I'm like, I'm going to shoot my las cannon at your guy. And you're like, okay, rotate Ion Shields there. And I'm like, great, that's what I wanted you to do. Everything else, shoot at the other one and kill it. So just be careful of something like that. That's also another reason why you might only ever want to take one big knight, probably just Canis Rex. But if you only ever take one, then you don't ever have to worry about it. You just put this on that one, and it's the one that's going to get it. So just be sure not to let people bait this out if you can help it, and that requires just playing the game and knowing how much damage you can take, what weapons you're getting shot with, that kind of stuff. So it takes a little bit of just losing, honestly, in order to understand when to use stratagems and how to use them, and then, you know, how to position your guys, thinking about how to use your stratagems as well. But yeah, those are good. And then Trover's Claim is useless. Valiant Last Stand is very good as well. It's just too expensive for 2 CP, but it's good. It's just nice that the Imperial Knights are just so simple. They get a 6-up Feel No Pain. They get reroll one, hit and a wound. Like, they're just easy to remember abilities, and they're just easy to play because you don't have to think about a whole lot of models, where they're going to go. You've got one big base. It does what it does. It moves up, it shoots, it kills stuff. You can kind of rely on your other units for getting your objectives. And so let's talk about that right towards the end here. How are you going to build your lists, and what do you want to do with secondaries? You're going to have to ally an assassin, if not 2, plus 2 units of henchmen. I think it's just a requirement to play this army. I literally wouldn't build a list that didn't have those, at least those 3 things in it. An assassin, 2 units of henchmen. I would probably take like a second assassin. Yeah, I think I would take a second assassin instead of like Kodiaz or something, because I really, really need to be able to get secondaries. And if I have the units to get secondaries, then I can think even less, and I can just be like, yep, these other big units are just moving up and killing you. All I have to worry about is these little things that are popping around the table and getting me my secondaries. So you have to put them in there. There's just no 2 ways about it. You have to put an assassin and henchman in an Imperial Knights army if you want to actually be able to achieve secondaries. It's just the way it is. I think that's it. I think that's all we're going to talk about for the Imperial Knights today. So we talked about what units are good, whenever they're points. We talked about how to use those units. We talked about the different stratagems, how to use them, when to use them, kind of how this army plays. It's very straightforward and simple, like I've been saying, which is nice. Hopefully this video wasn't super duper long. How long is it? 121 minutes. That's it though. I am done talking for tonight. My voice hurts. You're not watching anymore anyway. If you did make it to the end here, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Be sure to stomp the like button, smash it with a lance of whatever the Lancer has. Subscribe to Theory Hammer. Leave a comment down below. Tell us what you think of the Imperial Knights. Tell us if you liked our video. Smash Noble's bell icon. Check out our other videos as well. We got all kinds of content out there. We got stuff you're going to want to see. So go check it out. I'll appreciate it, and you'll appreciate it too. And with that, I'm going to stomp the fuck out of here, and I will see you guys in the next one.